Hello, everyone. It's me, Jay, your GM. I use he them.
Hello, everyone. It's me, your heir. I use he, him.
Why do
And this is YouTube.
you? Why do you sound like you lost so much energy when we went live? You.
I, I'll get it back. There was,
Air
performance
before
anxiety. It happens
recording
to
was
all
like
men of a certain
exuberant,
age.
energized, and spirited. Ooh, after starting recording, hello everyone, welcome to.
You will enjoy this YouTube content.
All right, gang. Today we've got a great topic, a great topic for you. We are a little bit obsessed with the new rules, and so as people
Mhm.
who are a little bit obsessed tend to do, we've been scraping the bottom of the barrel looking for clues of what is to come.
Just
And
to get,
so,
just to get a taste, just to
yeah,
get a little
exactly. Just
hit,
a hit
just
of that new rules,
so I
and
can feel again, just so I can get to the end of the day.
so we come to some conclusions. We've come to some conclusions about the new stats based on what we've seen. So we thought we could bring those together for you and kind of give you a little bit of a sneak peek of what to expect in the new monster manual. Now, part of this comes from the Beast Compendium at the end of the PHB. Part of this comes from the new Uni adventure that was released on D&D Beyond. And at least
Mhm.
one stat block was released as like a preview. An important thing to note, WotC has called out in basically every place that these stat blocks have been printed except the PHB, that these are not the final version of these stat blocks, that there's still potential changes that could be made, and so we should, relax and not take it as the word of God that everything will be exactly this way. But it gives us some good places to start and some good things we can see. Obviously, we have the lineage of design that has been leading up to the new edition as well. Obviously, there were big changes in the way they designed monsters in basically every monster book after Volo's Guide to Monsters,
Monsters of the
Xanathar's,
Multiverse.
yeah, uh, uh, the Giants book, the Dragons book,
Dragon,
and
Pizbuttons, yeah.
then most recently was Volo's Guide to the Multiverse or Monsters of the Multiverse.
Volo's Guide to Monsters of the Multiverse,
Mordenkainen's
yeah.
Monsters of the Multiverse. Ah, jeez Louise.
Multiverse, yeah.
Um, we're really good at knowing a lot about D&D. Anyway, um, so in each of those books, we've gotten some hints. We actually also got some hints in. I feel like we got the most advanced information off of little drop products that come in as like promotional material. Probably because those are designed the closest to when they're just released, right? Like, there's something they throw
Hmm.
together in a couple weeks and then get it out the door. And so it's like showing us, because the books obviously take a year or two to come out. So it's showing us a little bit of like a year ahead in their design process. And I want to say that it was a recent charity drop that they did that had some like the legendary action changes before everything else did. So we started seeing how they were going to approach legendary actions, but that's getting into it. So let's actually get into it. First thing I noticed in the Uni book, they had monsters with roles. Now, this was a very big thing in
Hmm.
4th edition, not so much in 5th edition. So, if we look at the 5th edition, we have the Bullywug, right? But in the new stat blocks that they released, we don't have the Bullywug. We have the Bullywug Warrior. And then we also have the Bullywug Bog Sage, which is a stat block that did not exist at all, and there was no comparable stat block in the 2014 version of the book. So this is just like a brand new stat block. And the addition of the term Bog Sage here, and the addition of the term Warrior here, we also saw with the Bugbear that it was listed as Bugbear Warrior. This seems to imply that something that they started doing with I want to say it was Volo's Guide to Monsters, which was where they started creating role variants of monster stat blocks, so specifying
Hmm.
that, like taking the sort of general ability of that monster type and then applying it to a more specific build that leaned more into a specific fantasy. So a Bog Sage is obviously your spellcaster Bullywug. So you can mix a bogcaster with a warrior and get a more dynamic encounter, more dynamic fight. Because you've got a mix of different enemy types versus just one singular. I mean, if we look at the Bullywug monster, right, it has a multi attack. It can make two melee attacks, one with its bite, one with its spear. That's what it does. Now we've got the warrior who can still do the same thing. He's got his action attack, his leap ability, but he's also got the bog sage who can back him up, cast dancing lights, fog, cloud, grease, vitriolic sphere. Makes the encounter a little more interesting, a little more dynamic. And this was very common in 4th edition, where they had roles that monsters broadly fit into, and so basically every monster type had, one of those different roles representing like a bunch of different stat blocks in each of those different roles. And it just made encounter design a lot easier, and it made encounter variety a lot more interesting. So this is a good change. This is something we've seen for a long time in 5th edition design, though. It's like I said, it started with Monsters of the Multiverse, and we've been seeing it since then. Monsters of the Multiverse went back and added a bunch of different kinds of orcs, and several other stat blocks, Yuan-Ti. And then in the Giants book, we got a bunch of different kinds of giants, and in the Dragons book, we got a bunch of different kinds of dragons. So this is something they've been doing, but now they're going to bring it back to the core book, which is cool.
And like even those two examples we're looking at now are very much like archetypal of 4E roles. Like you've got a brute, you have a controller. Like even the classes kind of fell into roles of like I think leader was like what they meant for like a support type character, like a cleric. Controllers being wizards, skirmishers and brutes being different, martial characters that want to either hit and run or get in there and tank hits. So yeah, like definitely the monster design is also falling in line with that, and it's yeah, it's fun to see.
Yeah.
Lots more variety.
Health is kind of an odd one. I feel like it was expected that many people expected to see health increase a lot in the new version.
Mm-hmm.
Especially with damage numbers going up as much as they are. You would think we would
Mm-hmm.
see health pools going up alongside to compensate for that, but we really haven't. In basically every stat block I've seen so far, the health pool has been identical or nearly identical, and in many cases exactly identical. I think we can look down the list here. Warg. If we go to the Warg here, that's the 2014 version. This is the 2024 version. The 2014 version has 26 hit points. The 2024 version has 26 hit points. So
Mm-hmm.
we're seeing that these two creatures are exactly the same in hit points, and that's very, very common across the board. Now, a lot of the stat blocks we've seen have been in the 1/8 to 1 range. Some going up as high as like
CR
2,
wise, yeah.
3 CR, yeah. We haven't seen a ton beyond that. And so it might be the case that the health pools are going to grow more at higher levels. But a contradiction to that, a potential counterexample to that, is the green dragon, which we'll get into more later. But it's only got 17 additional HP, and it is a CR very high, 21, I think. So very similar HP pool. I mean, 17 is basically negligible at that level. So very similar hit point pool. An interesting outlier to this was the mage stat block. The mage stat block we see here has basically had its hit points doubled. The original
Because it said
2014
its hit
version.
dice doubled, yeah.
The original 2014 version had 40 hit points, and we now see that the 2024 version has 81 hit points. CR 6 still. The CR has not changed on any monster. We already know that. Because they want these things to be quote unquote backwards compatible so that you can just drop them into old adventures and such. But the hit points have doubled. And this is very, very interesting in my opinion because this is what we kind of expected, right? We expected to see hit point pools go up a lot. And so far, this is the only stat block we've seen where that's the case. Which tells me that they're probably taking a very case-by-case approach to it. They're probably really looking at how these stat blocks are performing. They're checking each one. They're looking for outliers at their challenge rating. I mean, the mage at a CR6 was an outlier hit point wise. Like everything at CR6 has much closer to the 80 hit point range. So perhaps they're going through at the each CR and looking through like for any outliers, like statistical outliers, like, oh, this stat book just has really low HP for its CR. Why is that? Let's reevaluate that. Or they might just be extensively playtesting enough to have caught that the mage needed more hit point to function at its level. I don't know. But it's really intriguing that this one specific stat block seems to have received so much more HP.
I actually was wondering if it's the case that because the mage stat block is the stat block for the
Mm-hmm.
villain of the uni adventure, right? The big bad evil guy of that
Mm-hmm.
adventure is a mage, and so that's their stat block. So I was wondering if there's going to be some perhaps general advice in the DMG about customizing monsters to be like, oh, if you want this, mage
Mm.
who's a glass cannon traditionally to be
Mm-hmm.
your big baddie, double their hit dice, double their hit points,
Mm-hmm.
to have them last a little bit longer. I think one of the other things that's really interesting is, this mage, because the spell casting mechanics have changed, right? It used to be that, they're a full ninth level caster. They have the spell slots of a ninth level caster in 2014. So
Mm-hmm.
they've got four uses of shield. Now, shield is just a reaction
Mm-hmm.
that they can take twice a day. So
Mm-hmm.
it's half their number of shields. They don't have a great AC to begin with.
Interesting to note that they
Especially,
do change the default AC to just 15. They don't worry about the 15 with mage armor. Like,
yeah,
he's
yeah,
just
they
got
just bake
mage
in.
armor. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I think somewhere in this block it actually says. I thought I had seen when I was reading it previously that it said mage armor was kind of baked into the AC calculation already. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
included under beside the spell mage armor. It says included above in brackets.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I am wondering really, yeah, is this a reworking of the numbers for this particular stat block because
Mm-hmm.
it was just too low balance wise, or is this some hint at a how to customize a big bad evil guy for your arc in a campaign?
And that's just something we can't know yet because we
Yeah,
we don't
yeah,
have enough data
I'm
points to
well.
look at. I would think it would be odd to like if they change the mage for this one little adventure book. Um but that it would make sense if you're like you're saying if it was like guidance for how to make a solo mob out of any encounter, right?
Hmm,
How to
hmm, hmm.
increase that solo mob capacity. I don't know. We'll see. But it was
Yeah,
interesting as an outlier that it is the only one we've seen with a significant health bump so far. So something to keep an eye on.
I would love to see some, yeah, in the DMG, some guidance around
Mm-hmm.
how to make a boss out of a monster and then how to minionize any boss and get them down to, fodder for fireball or whatever, but they're still potentially doing damage. Those things were very, very popular creature types in 4E, and I know there's been some clamoring with
Mm-hmm.
5E to get back to to minions and to bosses with cool abilities. So we'll see,
Mm-hmm.
we will see.
Another thing we've been seeing for a long time is the specification of action economy in monster
Mm-hmm.
stat blocks, like actually listing out this is done as a bonus action in the bonus action section. We're now seeing that brought back to the monster manual. So here we see the previously we had the teleports, and then hidden in the teleport text was that before or after teleporting, the dog can make one bite attack. It's very easy to miss down there. Very easy to think that like, oh, I can either bite or teleport. Well, I want
Or
to get
teleport, yeah.
damage done. With it, and but now it's much more clear. Bonus action teleport, recharge on a 4 to 6, or bite. So you and bite like that. They take
And but
different
yeah.
parts of action economy.
Hmm.
We see that the hit points have actually gone significantly down. So 22 to 16. So this thing has 6 less HP. Same armor class. The damage is 5 versus the old damage of 4. So an extra point of damage, but more importantly, 2 extra points to hit. So this thing's
Hmm.
going to hit significantly more. It's going to hit a little bit harder, a tiny bit harder. And it's just going to be easier to read and understand how to control this thing in battle, which I think is good. This is just clearer.
I don't know if you'll have another example of this later on, but one thing the Blink Dog is a good example of, if
Mm-hmm.
you flip back to the 2014 version, is there were a lot of traits for
Ah,
creatures that
yes.
like keen hearing and
Mm-hmm.
smell, where they have advantage on perception checks if they're hearing or smelling. A
Mm-hmm.
lot of that stuff has just been redesigned as expertise. You can see now if you look at perception, they have a +5 because
Mm-hmm.
they're pulling in a they're getting expertise. They're getting their proficiency bonus doubled, which is 4
Mm-hmm.
+1 from wisdom gets them to a perception of 5. So
Mm-hmm.
rather than having to specify the dog is doing a sniff, they just have that.
Yep, and I put that under the category of
Mm.
secondary effects. So keen sense, keen smell, things like that have largely been done away with. And we see that again in the wolf, as you pointed out, that the wolf used to have keen hearing or smell, and now it doesn't have that, making the stat block significantly shorter. Um,
Hmm.
and you'll see that the perception is also +5 here, despite only a +1 wisdom, and that is, of course, expertise from proficiency. So yeah, that is a trend for sure. And you can really see this trend in action in the PHB because the PHB monsters are largely familiars. And
Hmm.
familiars are beasts who have these sorts of senses, and so it was definitely something we could pick up on right away. That a major change had happened in that area. Um, Damage is broadly the same or even less, but second effects are stronger.
Mm-hmm.
So again, we're looking at the warg here. Um, if we look at the 2014 warg, uh, they had a roll to hit, and then if they hit, they got a DC 13 strength save or be knocked prone. Now they roll to hit, and if they hit, the next attack against the target before the start of the warg's next turn has advantage. So they basically have like a Vex weapon mastery,
Mm-hmm.
yeah,
Hmm.
built into
Hmm.
their bite
Yeah.
attack. So we're just seeing that the secondary effects do not have saving throws, and this actually gets into a more uh, broad change, which I listed here is all actions are one roll. So abilities which require an attack to trigger or a saving throw, abilities which require an attack to trigger a saving throw are now either an attack or a saving throw. And there's a great example of this. The giant spider had both, and now both abilities have been changed. So previously they had a bite attack that triggered a con save to take poison damage.
Mm-hmm.
And they had a web attack, which had a strength check, which if it hit, the target was restrained. And then they could potentially attempt to break the restraint. Now they have, let's see, the new version. Oh, I opened the old version twice. Did I? No, here we go. This should be right. Yes, okay.
There
So
we go.
now they have a bite attack that just deals poison damage, straight up. You do lose an interesting secondary effect from the old giant spider, which allowed if the poison damage reduces the target to 0, the target is stable but poisoned for 1 hour, even after gaining hit points, and is paralyzed while poisoned in this way. This was obviously
They're
meant
doing
to
the
be a Shelob, right? A she,
Shelob.
yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Uh huh.
Yep. Gonna
Um,
eat you later.
Exactly. This is classic spider stuff. But we lose that interesting effect, which is a shame. But, I mean, look at the wall of text that this is versus the simple 2 lines that this is. Um, Everything comes with a trade off. And then the web, there's no longer an attack roll, it's just a dex saving throw. So there's no longer an attack roll, it's just dex save, DC 13. One creature the spider can see within 60 feet. On a failure, the target has a restrained condition until the web is destroyed, and it tells you how to destroy it. Again, wall of text boiled down to 5 lines, which is really nice. But we're seeing that like
Speeds up
everything is
play, makes it easier. Yep.
everything is one roll now. It's either a deck save or an
Hmm.
attack
Hmm.
roll. It's a saving throw or an attack roll. There's no longer abilities that trigger saving throws.
Which, yeah, I mean, speed up play on the DM side. They're running
Hmm.
multiple monsters. Yeah, that stuff is, okay for players. Like if I'm a monk, I don't want to give up my attacks to, force a chance at a stunning strike. So
Hmm.
it makes sense to have an attack that then procs a save. But even, in that instance, that's you only get one save at it. You're not, making forcing a con save every round
Hmm.
now. So across the game they've tried to really cut down on the
Hmm.
amount of one roll precipitating another roll and so forth. Yeah.
Yeah. So for the finale here, we'll look at the biggest stat block we've seen so far,
Hmm.
with the biggest changes we've seen so far, and it should, because this is the green dragon. This is the ancient green dragon. Oop. Uh. Okay. Hang on a second. I want to get my OBS to capture the fullness of the stat block here. So let me just. Here we go. All right. So it's a little bit blurry because it's a scan of a scan of a scan of a scan at this point. But
Mm-hmm.
effectively, what we're looking at here is the new Ancient Green stat block in its current state, not final. So there still could be changes to this. But there are a lot of really interesting things to note in this stat block. We've already gone over the health, which is basically 17 points difference, 402 versus 385. Not a huge difference there. Armor class is the same. Um, Movement speeds are all the same. So these things have stayed largely the same. Um, Really interesting right off the bat. Legendary actions are going away in 2024. I can say
Mm-hmm.
that with some confidence. We have seen this design tried out many times now. I think the first time we saw it was with Vecna, the Vecna stat block.
Mm-hmm.
But we've seen it in subsequent materials. I think Tasha had a stat block written in this way. It was actually really interesting because in the very recent adventure module about Vecna, there were mixes of stat blocks. Some had legendary actions, some had
Yeah.
reactions, just depending on when they were
Yeah.
designed.
Yeah.
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 So it was really interesting. But legendary actions are going away, and they're being replaced with multiple reactions. So the dragon can take up to 3 reactions per round, but only one per turn. If the dragon is in its lair, it can take an additional reaction per round. So we're also seeing the elimination of the lair action. So legendary actions and lair actions both appear to be gone. Lair actions instead offer a new additional use of your reaction and an additional use of your legendary resistance. Previously, we see they have 3 a day legendary resistances. Now we see that they have 4 a day or 5 a day in layer. So layer action gone, but now you get an additional reaction, an additional legendary resistance. 5 legendary resistances is very strong.
Very strong.
I find in combats 3 legendary resistances can take 2 to 3 turns to burn through sometimes. Monsters already have decent saves,
Mm-hmm.
so uh, these just make your saving throw irrelevant. So if you do manage to roll a bad roll, or if they target a weak save, um, these can just supersede that. And 4 and 5 is a lot. I mean, if you think you have 2 casters in your party, you're failing maybe one saving throw per round. You're talking about 5 rounds before you're out of legendary resistances. That means the vast majority of the fight you are going to have your legendary resistances, which is, it's a buff. It's a defensive buff. Additionally, we saw the charisma save increased by 2, which is not a huge difference, but it's there. They have advantage on, they have a +8 to initiative and advantage. So they've gone from a +1 to initiative here. Where is that listed? Yeah, right here. Roll initiative +1. They've gone to a +8 to initiative, and they have battle ready. The dragon has advantage on initiative rolls. So, working with a functional +12 to initiative, the dragon is going to go either first or very high in initiative in almost every combat. Yeah, dragons are which is a real like problem in the old design. Like I very often had boss monsters who would just roll bad on their initiative and end up at the last slot in initiative and just get a whole turn of players wailing on them before they got to do anything.
Mm-hmm,
Um,
mm-hmm.
so this is definitely a huge buff. It's also a huge buff because advantage on initiative, the new rules for surprise is disadvantage on initiative. So even if you surprise this dragon, you're just getting a straight roll out of him. So it's going to be dragons are going to go pretty high in initiative almost all the time. Which is cool. I think, especially for the ancient green, it feels very evocative. We'll see if the other dragons all have this boost to initiative. This may be an ancient green dragon specific effect indicating their intelligence. We don't know. But,
I would
yeah.
almost hope it is a
Mm-hmm.
global change for a creature that is likely to be
Mm-hmm.
a big set piece battle where it is the main issue. Maybe there's some smaller, ads, maybe minions or something like that in the fight, but it's really meant to be like this is the boss monster we need to take down because yeah,
Mm-hmm.
you want a chance for it to, especially now that damage is really been
Mm-hmm.
ranked up in this edition, it's seeming from the player side. And we'll talk a little bit about what we're seeing with some of the builds we've been kind of mathing out and how they compare against what we're seeing in monster stat block wise. But yeah, giving them a chance to get that breath weapon off first to just really prove themselves out to be the threat that you're building them up to be. Love it. I would like to see
Mm-hmm.
boss monsters or things that are likely to be boss monsters go first.
Yeah, I agree. Battle ready as a trait for boss monsters seems very cool. Um,
Hmm.
let's see. Moving from
And can
defensive
I
buffs. Oh, yep.
Oh yeah, to office.
No,
I
what?
just wanted to say, can we take a second just outside of the monster design itself? Can we talk about the stat block design? Because can I tell you how much I fucking love that the saving throw
Uh
proficiencies
huh.
are listed out beside the modifiers. They're not aligned like the skills, where it was
Mm-hmm.
like I had to go and find that line for saves, and maybe I didn't think it. I just looked at decks and I'm adding, just their modifier, but oh no, they had proficiency or whatnot, and I forgot all about it. And I love the new layout
Mm-hmm.
of mod save score for all the main six attributes.
I agree. I really agree. There have been so many times where I'm running a monster stat block and I just assume they don't have saves because they almost never do. And so I click on the
Hmm.
stat and I roll the stat and I do the turn and I resolve it and I get to the end of the turn and I look down and I see, oh, he had proficiency in that. I should add a +5 to that. Oh my god. Would have
Hmm,
completely
right?
changed that turn. It's really nice to like. It's very clean layout. I'll really like it when it gets integrated into the D&D Beyond side of things. So, because
Hmm.
I
Hmm.
mean, right now we have these as clickables. I imagine in this version, you just have the boxes clickable, um, which would be quite nice as well. But yeah, I think it's gonna. It really looks good. I just think in general the stat block looks good. It's nice and clean. It's very
Hmm.
efficient. Um, with this old one, we have a
And
bar
again,
down
yeah,
here. We have a
scroll
bar up
down,
here.
right?
We have a
Like,
bar up here.
and just scroll
Mhm.
down. Look at the length of this thing in
Mhm.
comparison to,
Mhm.
you know,
Yeah. If we
what we're
if
rocking in
we
2024. Yeah.
if we zoom out here, and the funny thing is that like the 2024 one does more stuff.
Hmm.
In this shorter stat block, it does way more stuff than I mean. Look at all
Absolutely.
this, like,
Almost like a third bigger, 40% bigger,
mm-hmm.
and it's doing less. Yeah,
And I
they've
think a lot of
really,
that. Look at these little bars that go across the screen every
yeah,
2 lines of text, just
yeah,
wasting
little
space.
dividers. Yeah.
All of that is in one block here, just compressed together. No dividers between these saving throws and these stats and these stats and this block of HP AC stuff and this block of name stuff. Like it's all compressed down really nicely.
In
I like it.
the last video when we were talking about like maybe how flavorful elements of certain things like spells got removed
Hmm.
potentially at the upon the altar of word count, and we're like, we missed that. But
Hmm.
this is definitely an example where it was like we can design the layout of this better to
Hmm.
make it more efficient and save space, and it's working a treat.
Hmm.
I'm loving it.
Yeah, and as we saw with the spider, we have also sacrificed some flavorful things on the altar of word count here. But I think by and large, I mean, like those keen senses, right? Keen senses just becoming
Yeah.
expertise. It's invisible. You can't see it, so you're not really realizing that they're giving like that feature until you're like really looking at it. But at the same time, like, if that's the price we pay to get more custom, unique variants of monsters, get more variety of monsters, get more interesting
Hmm.
monsters in general, I'm willing to make that trade. It's in this case, I think the trade is a trade up versus where
Hmm.
spells, I think it's a trade down.
Yep.
Yeah, it's case by case basis. But yeah, so offensive buffs. The main offensive buffs are first of all damage, but we'll get into that more in a second. They get ranged attack reactions now. So the old dragon, as their legendary actions, they had tail attack, which was melee. They had wing attack, which was an AOE melee, and then they had detect, which was basically let them find somebody who's hiding as a legendary action, which was not an interesting legendary action. I almost never used it, and so yeah, I don't mourn it at all. Um, but with the new one, we're seeing ranged options built in. So we have this corrosive miasma ability, which lets it use its legendary when the trigger is when the dragon uses its legendary resistance trait or is hit with a ranged attack. The response is a con saving throw, DC 21, each creature in a 30-foot radius sphere. So that is 10 feet bigger than a fireball in every dimension. Um, Centered on a point the dragon can see within 90 feet. So that's 90. If you put it at the maximum range, then you're reaching out 120 feet from the dragon. Um, so 90 feet. Failure 14 poison damage. Not that much. But the target takes a -2 penalty to their AC until the end of their next turn. So you're talking about AoE damage in a fairly large radius. 14 poison damage, not a huge amount of damage, but a -2 penalty to AC is pretty massive. I mean, that's a 10% increase in your DPR, in your chance of hitting. Yeah, pretty massive. We also see Charming Presence, another creature the dragon can see ends its turn. Response: the dragon casts Charm Monster, 5th level version. I believe a 5th level Charm Monster can charm 2 targets per
Two
round.
targets. Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. It's
So,
fourth level spell. Yep.
yeah. So this is so that's gonna be pretty good too. Like as another ranged option, the big buff fighter ends their turn within range of you. You cast Charm Monster on it and the Barbarian. You take the entire DPS portion of the party out for a round. That's gonna be massive. And there's no once the player saves, they're immune to this effect here. So you can just do this round after round. Whoever's outputting the most DPR, you can just charm that person and turn them into a support role for a turn until they can get their saves and save out. Now, there are some new abilities on the player side that help them to make those saving throws. So, it's not all downside. But this is going to get probably at least one of the 2 targets per turn. They have a fairly high saving throw DC, 21. So it's going to get. And can we just talk about how cool it is to see spellcasting built straight into the stat block this time?
Hmm.
Spellcasting was optional in the old rules for dragons. They had like a list of potential spells and some rules for how to add spells. Now spells are built straight into this core stat block, so that's pretty cool too. And we see some
They're all
real,
thematic to this
mm-hmm,
dragon for sure. Cloud Kill.
yeah. And
Yeah.
crowd kill
Dissonant
is
Whispers.
nasty at 8th level. Crowd kill is pretty strong. Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
Modify
Hope you're a
memory is
dwarf.
very thematic.
Hmm.
Polymorph could be really bad. Turn one of the biggest hitters into a mouse, and then the party has to kill that mouse to get them back into their true form. You
But
just
they have
see,
to like literally kill the mouse. They have to chop
mm,
through their one temp hit
exactly.
point or whatever, and
Mm-hmm.
all their other hit points. They're very beefy mouse, actually.
Oh God, I didn't even think about that with the way the polymorph spell works now. Oh boy. So yeah, polymorph is going to be a strong one for sure. So I
And
did.
I also, j-
Oh yeah, what?
I just wanted to say, like, I love how thematic, because yeah, green dragons are known for
Mm-hmm.
being kind of cunning and poisonous, hence
Mm-hmm.
the options they have. But you'll note there's no generic dragon free fear here. There's no
Mm-hmm.
generic dragon frighten effect that every dragon had. Instead, they have charming presence using
Mm-hmm.
the charm monster spell because that's more emblematic of what a green dragon would do. They're not trying to scare you; they're trying to
Mm-hmm.
turn you to their side.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Um, yeah, and so the last thing I really did here is I went through and I looked at some damage output numbers because ultimately, at the end of the day, if we're concerned that new players are going to be significantly stronger than old players and they're not getting way more AC or way more HP, how are
Hmm.
monsters making up the difference? Part
Hmm.
of that is their legendary resistances going up, but part of that is if you do enough damage fast enough, the players can't full tilt DPR. They have to spend actions healing. They have to spend actions
Hmm. Hmm.
getting cover. They have to spend actions doing suboptimal plays to set up a successful turn against a high damage opponent. You get taking the dodge action for the monk. These sorts of things. They're sacrificing some of their extra flurry of blows attacks to defensively boost themselves
Or
because
up their
they're worried.
defenses. Yep.
So the way we arrive at that full turn DPR on 2014, I just went through and added all their basic damage abilities, which was I believe in 2014 it was a bite claw claw. Um, so yeah,
Multi-attack there. The dragon can use
yep,
forever presence to make three attacks, one with its bite, two with its claws. Yep.
yep. So bite claw claw. So it was total of 73 damage, 10 of which was poison damage.
Again, hope you're a dwarf.
For the 2024 version, I did Dissonant Whispers instead of one of their rend attacks. It does actually slightly less damage than their rend attacks, but I think as the dragon, you're wanting to provoke that attack of opportunity. You're wanting
Hmm.
to because that's an extra attack on their turn. But you're also wanting to expend a reaction on enemies. So you use Dissonant Whispers on the enemy spellcaster. Now they can't counterspell your
Hmm.
big spell next turn.
Hmm.
These sorts
Hmm.
of options.
They can't
Um,
shield against your rends. Yep.
so Dissonant Whispers, I think, is the one that they're going to want to go with more. Then they have, so it's basically just 3 Rends for the dragon now. No bite, claw, claw. It's just Rend. Um, and that is 27 damage. For a total of 75 damage, so 2 points of additional damage. However, interesting to note, 20 of this is poison instead of 10 poison, and 22 of it is psychic, which is going to be that really varies up the dragon's damage types, which is going to prevent
Hmm.
heroes from just casting Hero's Feast on themselves, right, and getting access to resistance to poison and completely nullifying your advantage here. Well, no, now I can attack you with psychic damage and bypass that resistance. So actually, Dragon's got a lot of options here. And let's not forget that they could also cast Cloud Kill instead of doing this. So
Eighth
on
level.
a group of 3 targets, Cloud Kill does 108 damage, assuming everybody fails the saving throw. Um, if the 3 targets are within a 20-foot radius, it's probably the better option than attacking if the group has no resistance to poison. So obviously that 108 potential damage drops to 54 if they have resistance, and it drops to 22 if they all make the saving throw. But against a group of people who don't have resistance to poison damage, who are clumped up together nicely for you, because Cloud Kill is damage over time too. So you cast it on the first round, and then maybe get a little bit of ancillary damage on round 2 and round 3 as you keep fighting. Because the
Never
Cloud
has
Kill.
the druid wished they prepared gust of wind more so than now.
Exactly. Now, the big difference changer here is the legendary action damage output. So here it's
Hmm.
the reactions. Previously was the reactions. Here it's the legendary actions. For this, I wanted to use the corrosive blast AoE. So to be fair, I also included the AoE wing attack for dragon. So The AoE wing attack only did 15 damage in an AoE, whereas the corrosive only does 14 damage. So pretty low damage on both. But again, you're getting that -2 AC. For that, I calculated 35 damage on average for 2.5 targets. For this, it's 37.5 damage, so slightly more, but not significantly. And you get that
Jay,
-2 AC effect.
small like gnomes and halflings do not count as half a player. That is offensive, and I do not like it.
um, but the wing attack costs 2 legendary actions, whereas this only costs one of your legendary actions. So you still get 2 Rins. You still get 2 Rins as your legendary action using Rind Retaliation. The dragon takes damage. Response: the dragon makes 1 Rind attack. So you can do another 27 plus 27 damage for a total of 89 damage and -2 AC versus 54 damage. So an
I mean,
additional.
not even just versus 54 damage. It's even more damage than they're doing with their action.
Mm-hmm.
Like, yeah, the
Yeah.
it's big time.
Mm-hmm. So you're potentially doing 30 additional damage with your legendary actions. But then we get into an interesting one, which is the layer action. Because I looked up the layer actions, 2 of them don't do damage. So I only could compare it to the Tangle Brush wall, which creates a wall through the battlefield that does
Mm.
18 points of damage. With 2024, we can do 27 with an additional Rend, or we can do 35 with an extra corrosive blast. So that's another 9 to 20 points of damage that we're getting per round. So collectively, over the course of our turn, we're getting 2 more damage on our action. Potentially a lot more than that if we can set up a good cloud kill.
Hmm.
We're getting 30 more damage here, and we're getting 10 to 20 more damage here. Collectively, you're looking at between 40 and 60 points of additional damage, or maybe even more than that, again, pending a good cloud kill. But that's all just assuming that we are focusing damage, because uh, we can charm targets, taking them out of the fight, giving us a huge defensive buff. Um, we can also. So I list that here. Caveat: often the more impactful choice will be to use 1 legendary action to charm 2 of the most powerful spellcasters, so they cannot harm you. Charming 2 almost ensures at least 1 fails the saving throw each turn, which in turn is a major defensive buff. Um, so some big additions here. Corrosive and Dissonant allow the dragon to attack at range without exposing itself to danger. These are going to be very good early in the fight and late in the fight. A big removal is the loss of the wing attack's reposition option. Allowing it to
Mm-hmm.
move on legendary actions was often very important in getting it into strategically advantageous positions before its turn arrives, right? So taking it out of harm's way on player turns, bringing it back into harm's way before its turn, bringing it back in close enough to attack on its turn, making those movements in and out was often very, very helpful. Losing that is definitely a defensive loss. Um, but overall, significantly stronger. Offensive is the biggest buff, but defensively, they're also still improved. So this is like, it's
I
going to
want to
be a
say
completely
just
different ball game.
Yeah, I want to say one of the big additions that I think you mentioned with this in It Whispers, but so many ways players have
Mm-hmm.
to screw monster action economy, right?
Mm-hmm.
Through affecting conditions and whatnot. Not we didn't see as much of in monster design.
Mm-hmm.
Giving a monster something like this in It Whispers to burn player reactions is a big step in rebalancing that towards the DM in order to, yeah, like you're saying, lock down shields, counter spells, any other big reaction things, defensive duelists, deflect attacks, all those new reaction defenses that players are getting. So I like it. I like it a lot. These monsters look so much more interesting to run.
Oh yeah, I mean, it's thematically cool. Like the flavor is all there. It's got a bunch of really flavorful spells and abilities. And it's also just mechanically there. It does a lot more damage every turn. I mean, if you think about an additional 40 points of damage, you're talking about even at 15th, 20th level, that's a quarter of a total character's hit points in additional damage on top of what it was already doing. And it didn't lose anything. It still has poison breath. It can still do 77 points of damage in a cone. That's still probably your
Mm,
best turn one option. Um, Cloud Kill could be argued. We'll see.
yeah.
Um, but well, no, Cloud Kill can't be argued because 77 per target. You're talking about 140 to 200 damage if you get three targets. It's a 90-foot cone. I think you can get three targets. Um, so yeah, really huge offensive buffs past that first turn. Poison breath, really flavorful. I just think it's great. I think they've done a great job here, and I think obviously I haven't run it yet. I haven't played this dragon in a combat with my players yet, but I have a strong suspicion that this is going to punch way more at its weight class than the old green dragon, which became something of a triviality by the end. Unfortunately, I can't test this against my current groups because they have Heroes Feast, and so get immunity to poison.
Yeah, we're just
Still,
immune to all the shit this thing does. Oh well.
yeah. Still playing the 2014 version. I really do like the Heroes Feast. Not only gives resistance to poison, by the way. That's a nice.
Hmm, hmm.
That's another secret buff for the poison dragon. um, yeah. All right. That's all I have to say. Is there any other things that you
Well,
want to
I
bring
want to
up?
say, like, numbers wise,
Mm-hmm.
I can't compare for like a CR22 creature right
Mm-hmm.
now, but like I've been crunching numbers and I've been watching folks crunch numbers for a lot of builds. I've been primarily focusing around like level 5, which I think is one of the more meteor levels. Third
Mm-hmm.
level spells are coming online. Marshal's getting extra attack. It's the end of tier 1 play, start of tier 2 play. So I was trying to crunch some numbers, and a lot of what I've been seeing and what a lot of other folks who've been building builds seeing at that level, which also happens to be the level that this uni adventure, based on the old D&D cartoon that they've just dropped, is at. I think the characters are at fourth level. I haven't crunched it out to see if they get enough XP to hit fifth,
Mm-hmm.
but there are a fair number of combat encounters in there, so that it could be a chance they do. On average, you're seeing around 40 to 45 DPR for a well optimized build, which means that mage is done in two character turns. It'll be interesting to see. Now, granted, they have shield and they have other things they can do now to mitigate some of that, but that's kind of where I want to go. I want to kind of compare what we're seeing on the player side to what we're seeing on the monster side to kind of figure out if there's a rough balance, at least at one slice, say fifth level. Look at a fifth level, four character encounter,
Mm-hmm.
see what if we can build something of a fair challenge for a party of that level, and compare the numbers and see, are we at a better state of parity between monsters and heroes.
Mm-hmm. It sounds like we need to run that mage encounter. um,
Yeah, yeah.
mm-hmm. um,
We could do that, but
yeah,
maybe
absolutely.
in future we'll blast your eyeballs with spreadsheets. We'll see.
Mm. I'm excited to test this dragon out. I definitely wanna run this dragon versus a party and see how
Like,
it compares.
I mean, I say this with all the love in my heart that I have for you. You are an unrelenting dragon pervert. Like, when it
Uh
comes to fantasy monsters,
huh.
dragon is first, and
Uh
then I don't even know what second is, but it's so far away from first, it might
huh.
as well not even show up,
Well, it
right?
ain't called Dungeons and Beholders, you know. You gotta honor the classics. You gotta honor the
You gotta
classics.
play the hits.
Mm-hmm.
No new stuff. Only play the
Well, you
hits.
can play new stuff, but you gotta honor the hits. Don't give me, Nirvana without Smells Like Teen Spirit. We gotta do it.
Oh, hold on, everybody.
Uh-huh.
The Gen X baby just made their reference.
All right. Well, thank you
Um,
very much for joining us. That's all I have to say.
that's all. Listen, new monster designs looking cool. Will they compete with player builds and whatnot? We will see.
We
Let's
will
find
see.
out in future. Okay, great. Bye.
Goodbye.